Don Sweeney's handiwork was on full display in a crushing loss to the Chicago Blackhawks on Thursday, raising questions as to whether or not he should be the one tasked to fix it.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Friday, April 11th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen. Please remember that it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers will know that you can also find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. I've been covering this team for various outlets for 20 years. Worked for 5 years as a full-time hockey news editor at thescore.com and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. Today on the show, we will discuss last night's loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, which helped the tank, maybe raise some questions about the future, and whether or not Don Sweeney should be tasked with leading the Retool. We'll also do a quick tank update. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to listen and drop by the show. Please do subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube if you have not already. So the Bruins lost to the Chicago Blackhawks last night. The Blackhawks had 4 shots on goal in the third period, and all 4 of those shots went in to help them pull away 3 very quick goals scored within the span of 93 seconds for the Blackhawks to go ahead there, with some former Bruins doing some damage in the form of Nick Foligno. He had a couple goals. Ryan Donato, as well as Tyler Bertuzzi. We'll get more into this game in a moment, but what stood out to me was Don Sweeney's appearance on the NESN broadcast during the second period of the game, as well as a bit from Pierre LeBrun on TSN up here in Canada last night on their insider trading segment, where he said that there are some rumblings that perhaps Don Sweeney's tenure as general manager with the Boston Bruins is not as secure as we may have been led to believe by ownership around the trade deadline, where they gave Cam Neely, team president, and the GM, Don Sweeney, a vote of confidence. Now, LeBrun noted that Sweeney, of course, has been on the job for 10 years now, or almost 10 years, as we head towards the draft. They'll be missing the playoffs for the first time since 2016. And he's also entering the final year of his deal with the Boston Bruins. And there's no real decision made either way as to whether to renew it or not. Now, having said that, LeBrun did add that several GMs were impressed by the returns that Sweeney got at the trade deadline for the likes of Justin Brazeau, Trent Frederick, Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo. I don't know if that's the case with regards to the Brad Marchand trade as well. He scored his first goal last night for the Florida Panthers, if you missed that. And, to go from the best team in regular season history 2 years ago to a position now where they are 4th last in the NHL, that's a very striking drop-off. And the fact that Sweeney spent big money last summer on a couple signings that haven't paid off early. We're seeing some more out of Elias Lindholm here as the season winds down. But there's some questions as to whether or not he should be the guy to lead the rebuild. Now, he was on the NESN broadcast last night talking about how it's really been a tale of 2 teams this season, pre and post deadline. We saw so many changes with regards to the roster, with regards to the coaching staff. Not only guys were traded, but we also, of course, have Charlie McAvoy sidelined, Hampus Lindholm missing most of the season, Mark Kastelik sidelined. Neither McAvoy nor Kastelik will be back in the remaining 2 games. And Sweeney said that it is a failure on his part for this team not to be in the playoffs. And right now it's about habits, building chemistry, cohesion for these guys to realize what it takes to play in the NHL and to win at the NHL. He believed they were stuck in neutral. They needed to change course, and they have to be better in every area after he was asked by Judd Surratt where this team needed to improve. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to do here in order to get the Bruins back to a playoff level team next season. There were some encouraging signs even last night, despite the loss. Riley Duran making his NHL debut. Fabian Lysell basically running the second power play unit, getting some good looks, coming so close to scoring his first career goal. Fraser Minton, Marat Hust-Nudinov. These guys are young, full of energy, and look like guys who could contribute as early as next season. They will, of course, get a top pick to build on as well. Hopefully it's someone who can step in perhaps sooner than later. And they're also benefiting, of course, from the unbelievable performance from David Pastrnak, who scored his 42nd goal of the season last night and got his 60th assist on another Morgan Geekie goal, who scored his 31st. It really looks as though the Bruins have a top line to build around with Geekie, if he can be re-signed at a reasonable rate. Lindholm, who has come alive, I wouldn't say come alive, but really shown a lot here as the season has progressed. I really think that the kind of depletion of the leadership core opened it up for Lindholm and Zadorov to step up and become core members of this team, guys that take responsibility. Perhaps they felt more kind of in no man's land as new additions and deferring to the leadership core on and off the ice when it came to production, being vocal, etc. Now, Carlo, Coyle, Marchand, they're all gone. Pastrnak is emerging as the clear next captain. When McAvoy, Lindholm return, they too will be heavily influential in the locker room. But right after them, this is Zadorov and Lindholm's team just as much as anybody's moving forward because of the length of their contracts, the size of their contracts, and they will be counted on to be more vocal, influential on and off the ice. And to their credit, they have since the trade deadline, and kind of redeeming those decisions by Don Sweeney last offseason. So according to LeBron, it's not a home run decision that Don Sweeney will be back. We've seen in the past where, Bruce Cassidy was given a vote of confidence at the end of the season, fired promptly thereafter. We know the Bruins love their playoff revenue because it's money that they can bank. So will the Jacobs family be content with this season and put their trust in Neely and Sweeney to get them back to the playoffs as early as next year? That remains to be seen, and it could shape up to be an even more interesting offseason than we can anticipate with the volume of cap space that the Bruins will have at their disposal, and likely a top 4 pick at the NHL entry draft as well. That position in the draft was solidified by last night's loss to the Chicago Blackhawks, and it's a game we'll discuss more in detail here as the podcast continues. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, and there's no better time to get in on the action because the NBA and NHL playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team, diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to goals and assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets with a win on your first $5 bet. It's all available at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app, and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every day. Everydayers will know that I've kind of been angling for the finish as low in the standings as possible vibe from the Boston Bruins, and they achieved that goal last night by losing to one of the few teams in the NHL that is worse than them, and that is the Chicago Blackhawks, who scored 3 goals in a span of 1 minute and 33 seconds to pull away for a 5-2 victory. David Pastrnak opened the scoring on a deflection from a Lindholm shot that was also assisted by Morgan Geekie, but then the Blackhawks tied it up thanks to a Nick Foligno breakaway in the second period. And then in that period of 1 minute and 33 seconds, Ryan Donato, Tyler Bertuzzi, Kevin Korchinski all scored to give Chicago a 4-1 lead. It was brought to 4-2 by Morgan Geekie, but then Foligno, former Bruin, Blackhawks captain, sealed it with an empty netter. It's hard to see these former Bruins doing so well. Bertuzzi, of course, was a guy that I would have liked to have kept around. Definitely miss Nick Foligno's presence and his contributions. Interim head coach Joe Sacco said it's still a humbling league. It's a good league regardless of where teams are in the standings. You have to be ready for 60 minutes. It's a learning lesson. You have to show up and compete for 60 minutes regardless of who you are playing. Nick Foligno said it's something the Blackhawks are capable of doing. There's skill on this team. There are guys who can put the puck in the net. They just have not done that very often this season. Morgan Geekie extended his point streak to 9 games, 7 goals, 10 assists over that span. Pastrnak has an 8-game streak going on, 8 goals, 10 assists. Pastrnak said of Geekie, he's so happy for him. It's well-deserved. Works on his game, and you could see it this year. He's become a real goal-scoring threat. They are close friends. It's good to see him have success this whole year. Them being close friends, Pastrnak likely the next captain. That, of course, will likely be a factor in Geekie re-signing this offseason. Ryan Donato, I should mention, former Bruin as well. First player to score at least 30 for Chicago since Alex DeBrincat scored 41 in 2021-22. Riley Duran, I mentioned, he is from Boston, or from the Boston area, made his NHL debut for the Bruins, was a -1, but came oh so close to scoring on Arvid Soderblom, who stood very tall in the second period, especially flummoxing Lysell, Fraser Minton, Duran, all who had some fantastic opportunities. If it wasn't for Soderblom in the second period, then this could have been a much different game and a much different result for the Bruins. One other note on David Pastrnak, he became the 7th player in Bruins history to have at least 60 assists in consecutive seasons, and the first since Mark Savard, who had 3 straight 60 assist seasons from 2006 to 2009. I mentioned the second period there. The Bruins outshot Chicago 12-6 in that frame. They outshot them 11-4 in the third. Unfortunately, all 4 of Chicago's shots in that frame went in the net, whereas the Bruins were kept at bay by Soderblom, who was rightly named the first star of the game. He had a .939 save percentage for the Blackhawks last night, and was the difference, especially in the second period. The Bruins were led in shots by Fraser Minton, who had 5 shots in 16 minutes of ice time. Lindholm had an encouraging 4 shots on net as well, with a assist to his credit, primary assist. Lysell, Geeky, Pastrnak, each with 3 shots on goal as well. A lot is being made of Mason Lohrei's -4 on the night. He's now bottom in the NHL, I believe, with like a -43. I'm not reading too much into that. First of all, plus minus isn't really that big of an indicator anymore. There's much more detailed stats that we can glean. He's playing huge minutes as a young NHL defenseman without Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm in the lineup. A lot is being asked of him. He's still contributing offensively and has really reinvigorated the top power play unit. So I'm cutting him a little slack because, I mean, he's being asked to do too much this season as a young defenseman playing, his first full season at the NHL level. And maybe we should cut the guy a little bit of slack. And plus minus really is not something that we care too much about. 75 games this season, 33 points, 16 power play points. Their power play is garbage, and without him, it would be non-existent in some ways, as he has taken over duties there on the power play. So not the best night for the Bruins and for Lohrei and others, but at the same time, it served the tank well. The Bruins solidified their spot as the 4th bottom team in the NHL, which is probably, it is as low as they're going to get. Puts them in line for a pretty good draft pick coming up here in June. And we will take a look at the tank update as well as preview Sunday's game against the Pittsburgh Penguins here as the podcast continues. The playoffs are just around the corner for the NBA. Major League Baseball is well underway, and it's time for you to get on the Game Time app to get tickets for your next live game. Whether it's catching up on a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup, finding great seats at a great price used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. near you. Peace of mind, you get seat views before you buy with no surprise fees and a lowest price guarantee so you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time, last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. All right, so our Boston Bruins have 2 games remaining in the regular season, and it's coming down to the wire here when it comes to whether or not they can stave off the Seattle Kraken in the race for the best odds at getting the 4th overall pick. Let me bring up the Tankathon here. You can see that both the Bruins and the Kraken have 2 games remaining on the schedule. The Bruins slightly behind 1 point, and they have a point percentage of .456 compared to Seattle's .462. So the Bruins right now have, it's basically the difference between 9.5% odds and 8.5% odds. You can see their opponent on Sunday has 3 games remaining. The Flyers also have 2 games in hand, so these Pennsylvania teams unlikely to drop. The Bruins can max out at 77 points, which would put them, if none of these teams win any more games, would put them down in the 8th spot. But the Sabres have won 8 of their last 10. All these teams performing better than the Bruins as of late. Pittsburgh and New Jersey on the schedule, and they will, the Devils especially, may be looking to kind of avenge that loss the other night, 7-2, and to enter the postseason on a higher note. So right now, that is the odds. The draft order at the moment would be the Bruins picking 4th. And let's just take a look at the odds. So they have a 9.5% chance of 1st or 2nd, 15.4% chance of 4th, 44.6% chance of 5th, and a 20.8% chance of 6th. So it's more likely that they would drop than move up, unfortunately. I'm not sure why, when they're in the 4th spot, that their best odds are 5th, but that just seems to be the way that it goes here. Even Chicago, they have better odds of dropping to 4th than staying in 2nd. So you really need some luck on your side here. Let's just run the Tankathon before we preview the game against the Penguins. First running of the lottery, we have the Bruins jumping up to the number 2 spot, which would be amazing. They would likely select Michael Misa with that selection. Here we have the Bruins dropping to 5th. Next, we have the Bruins dropping to 6th. Buffalo moving up to the 1st pick. That would be unfortunate. Bruins dropping to 5th here. And then finally, they drop to 6th. So that's a 2 and then a 5, 6, 5, 6. You can see how it kind of varies, and hopefully they're able to finish with a pick that is a bit higher than where they're projected. And of course, as the postseason begins, we will turn our attention more towards the draft, free agency, some season reviews. Everydayers will want to keep it going even when the regular season ends because, we will not stop talking about our team even if they are not headed for the Stanley Cup playoffs. As well, the Providence Bruins are headed to the the Calder Trophy playoffs, and we will indeed be following them as well. Now, the Penguins do play tonight, so the Bruins will be extra rested. The Penguins, one of the other bad teams in the Eastern Conference this season, and this could settle the goal differential battle in the conference. Bruins, Penguins tied at minus 52. Right now, the Bruins have the worst point percentage in the East, the fewest points, and the worst goal differential. So they're really going for it here. The only reason they're out of a top 3 pick is because Nashville has been especially bad. And you may have heard me talk a couple weeks ago about who's the biggest disappointment in this in the NHL this season. And I would put Nashville up there as well as the New York Rangers, who are in danger of missing the playoffs after winning the President's Trophy last year. In fact, they're 6 points back of the Montreal Canadiens with one more game played. So it's likely that they will not be there. Anyways, not much to say about Bruins Penguins. It's an afternoon game on Sunday. I'll be back on Monday to recap whatever happens, bring you all the latest on the Boston Bruins. You're going to want to stay locked in and locked on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so that you never miss a thing. Thank you so much. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Hope you have a great weekend. Not much planned up here except for one exhibition basketball game for my kid. Gonna check out the Yellow Jackets finale. Want to check out that new John Hamm show on Apple, as well as the new season of Hacks. If you haven't watched The Pit yet, I'd recommend checking that out. That was a very good show as well. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much, friends. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.